Hello, 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 everyone. Welcome to another episode of Sree's daily global COVID-19 show. Welcome especially to those of you who are listening to the recording because you're seeing this from the beginning, unlike everyone who saw this live and are joining in progress. My name is Sree Sreenivasan, and it's my honor to host this daily global conversation around various aspects of the pandemic. We are discussing three crises: the health, financial, and racial inequality crises in America and around the world. We're always looking for guests and theme suggestions. Please email us, sree@sree.net. Today is Sunday, and Sunday we do Positivity Night. And as you can see, we're doing positivity with Will Sutton, but you can see an asterisk there. What's the asterisk about? You will find out when we talk to him in just a few minutes. Will Sutton is the New Orleans-based columnist for The Advocate, NOLA News, Loyola NOLA, and is the past president of the National Association of Black Journalists. On Sunday nights, we try to be positive despite every rotten thing going on. We meet generally positive, purposeful people who can help us get ready for the week. We might cry together, laugh together, mourn together, get angry together. We'll definitely learn together. And we're so glad you're able to join us. Tell us where you're watching from right now, please. We're also pleased to be in partnership with Scroll.in, one of India's leading news, culture, and analysis websites that's seen and read all over the world. Please stay tuned to meet Will. Hi, everybody. I'm Sree. I'm the Marshall Loeb Visiting Professor of Digital Innovation at Stony Brook School of Journalism, and I'm so glad to have you all here tonight. Please tell us where you're watching from. We're live right now on Facebook, on Twitter, on YouTube, and on LinkedIn, and we want you to tell your friends on all those channels to join us. I even want Will to make sure he uses the couple of minutes he has to go onto each of those platforms, find my posts, and share them. There's a good way for all of you to bring your friends into this conversation. Even if they can't watch it live, they'll be able to watch it later. We want to start by thanking our producers who make this possible. We want to thank Rose Horowitz, who's at Rose Horowitz 31, and Vandana Menon, Vandana_Menon on Twitter. They're both tweeting and sharing content. We hope you will follow them. This is episode 109. That means we've been on lockdown in New York for 109 straight days, and we've done 109 shows in a row. And we are only able to do it because of all of you, the incredible community that has come around and joined us from around the world. Some of you have written to say how helpful this is to you. Some of you have called this a lifeline, but I want to tell you this is my lifeline, and this is helpful to me to have this daily global conversation. We also want to thank our sponsors who make this possible. So let us thank Rutgers Global Entrepreneurship Experience. This is a virtual teen camp that any teens anywhere in the world can take. There are two cohorts, July 13th and July 20th. Please have them go to globalentrepreneurshipexperience.org and put in the 20% off code SREE. They'll learn from folks from Google, Facebook, Cognizant, Angie's List, and more. There's one terrible speaker, me. Your teen can skip that particular session, but they must attend all the other great sessions. Please check out that site so you can also pass this on to anyone you know who has teenagers who might be interested. We also want to thank our friends at Muckrack for organizing Fundamentals of Social Media, a free certification course that I've put together with my friend Linda Bernstein. mrac.co/social. Take a picture, take a screenshot, share it with your friends right now. mrac.co/social. More than 4,000 people have already signed up. It's free for any background, any job line, any experience, any age, and you will learn something. I learned something putting it together, and we've had so many great comments, and people are sharing their certificates. Here's Lauren Mack's certificate. That's what it looks like, and it's another line on your LinkedIn resume. So please do check it out. We also want to say hello to our friends our doctors who are running this great show called She's on Call. It's a new doctors medical show that my friends Sujana Chandrasekhar, Marina Korean, two surgeons in New York, are working together with me and my Digimentors company to put together. And they're on Sundays at 11 a.m. Eastern. Today they had Dr. Jordana Cohen and Dr. Olga Garcia, and they shared so much great content. Look for them on Facebook, Twitter, and on YouTube at She's on Call. Just find at She's on Call and watch the shows. You will learn a lot. And finally, I want to say to all of you, please check out the work of my company, Digimentors. We are doing dozens of virtual events a month. Don't cancel or postpone or even think about your in-person event turning virtual until you talk to us. We can be 10% of your production or 110% of your production. We're so proud that among the things we've done are some very big events and some small events. The biggest event, the largest gathering of teachers in history. It's called T4, and we had 100,000 teachers from 88 countries watching this session in English, Arabic, and Spanish. And our team, Digimentors, did all that work on the technical side, and we're very proud of it. So email me, sree@sree.net, sree@sree.net. And with that, I want to bring onto the stage our dear friend, Will Sutton, who's going to talk to us about so many things happening today. He is a New Orleans-based columnist. He's the past president of the National Association of Black Journalists, and he is here right now. Hi, Will.
Hey, Sree, how you doing, man?
Hey, Sree. Great to see you. Thank you for being here. My first question to everybody, how are you doing, and how's your family through this crisis?
Doing pretty good, all things considered. There's a lot going on in this wonderful world of ours. A lot of things to be angry, frustrated, and concerned about. I'm looking forward to talking with you this evening about some of the things going on, but I'm good. My wife's good. My dad's good. My sisters and my brother's good. Haven't been in the office since early March, but those are the times that we're living in. Trying to do my best to stay upbeat while being realistic and true with everything going on.
And that's all we can hope for. I especially wanted to ask after your dad, because he is on the elderly side, and he's 89. A great man. He's 89, God bless, and he's a great man who's done so much, and I know he's very proud of you. Tell us how he's doing.
He's doing pretty good. I'm happy to say that he put on his shoes this afternoon and took a walk down the block. As he likes to say, I'm kicking, just not as high.
Oh, I love that. That is great. Will you give him our best and tell him that we're cheering for him?
Absolutely, absolutely. He loves to hear stuff like that.
Yeah, he's got friends around the world who are going to cheer for him, because one of the things we'll do right now is do what we call our global tour, where people will tell us where they're watching from, and you'll get to respond to them as we're watching and talking to them. So that's kind of fun. A reminder, folks, we're meeting right now with Will Sutton, the fabulous journalist who is a columnist and also financial reporter and journalist, has done so many great things in his career and continues to do them. We'll also bring you excerpts from his columns that have gotten a lot of attention in recent weeks, and we'll talk about all of those. And you're watching my daily global COVID-19 show. Please follow Will. He's on Twitter at Will Sutton. Just one word, at Will Sutton, and he's on Twitter. What's your jam of all the social medias, Will? What's your jam?
Well, I'm on Facebook and Twitter most, but I am on Instagram, Snap, and LinkedIn. But I'm on Twitter and Facebook most.
All right, so you're giving a shout out to your Facebook and Twitter, but you're on Snap. That's pretty cool. Let's see who's watching. People are watching from all over the world, so we'll just have them say hello to you. Jonathan is watching from Union Square. Any memories of Union Square in New York? Any restaurants? You're welcome to react as we.
Oh yeah, as you know, for several years I was with the Dow Jones News Fund business journalism program, and we spent parts of summers in New York and doing some training at New York University to help summer interns get ready for a summer of business and financial reporting, and spent quite a bit of time in and out of Union Square during those summers.
Nice. Ashok is watching from India. Have you been?
I have not. It's on my list. I hesitate to say bucket list because I see that as being very far off, not looking forward to the bucket and kicking it. But I'd like to get there someday.
All right. We hear you. Paula Kiger is watching from Tallahassee. Have you been?
Been to Tallahassee, been to Florida State, spent more time at Florida A&M University, the great FAMU, one of our fabulous historically Black universities, and spent a lot of good time there. Even did some NABJ workshops and programs there, as well as just visiting the School of Journalism there as well.
Oh, that's terrific. I just want to say that Paula is part of our production team at Digimentors, and she helps run our New York Times Sunday read along, where we read the New York Times out loud like crazy people every Sunday morning, 8:30 to 10. My plan was to bring you onto that one day, which we might still be able to convince you to do. But in the meantime, today our guests were Pavan Dhingra, who is the author of Hypereducation: Why Good Schools, Good Grades, and Good Behavior Are Not Enough, big new book about the education market, and Marina Kurian, one of our hosts of She's on Call. She got to answer some questions about the medical space. So make sure you all check out 8:30 a.m. Eastern, but you can find them, all these shows, in my archives on YouTube. YouTube.com/Sreenet is the best way to catch up with all my archives, all the video that we are putting out. Let's see who else is watching. Jonathan says, greetings from the East Village. Manuel's watching from Spain.
Haven't been to Spain.
All right, we've got to get that list
Thanks
going.
for joining us, Manuel.
Yeah. Rahadian from Long Island.
Absolutely, been out to Long Island and have enjoyed my time. I can't remember the name of the restaurants, but had some good meals out that way.
Very nice. Patty's in North Carolina.
Absolutely, spent time at the News and Observer, Patty. Had a wonderful time there from about 1996 to 2005, and with the News and Observer, the NNO, and they've been doing some good work around COVID recently.
Thank you.
Proud of them.
Christine's watching from suburban Houston.
I have a brother in suburban Houston, and friends in and around Houston. They've been battling quite a few things in recent years, including a hurricane, and more recently been hugely hit by this pandemic. So I'm praying for folks in and around Houston that everything will get better.
What is the connect? There's like a deep connection between New Orleans and Houston, isn't there?
Yeah, basically the northern part of Louisiana tends to gravitate toward Dallas, and the southern part tends to gravitate toward Houston. And the reason for that is the interstate that goes east-west up north is I-20, and the interstate down south from Mississippi through New Orleans and southern Louisiana and Texas is I-10. So basically, when you get on that, be right in Houston in no time, a few hours.
Let's look at a map. You know, we're talking about New Orleans. Everyone sees Florida, and everyone knows Texas. And New Orleans sort of between New Orleans, Texas, and Florida. So you're right here, right? And
yep.
And you're looking, and there's Houston, not too far. So much closer to Houston than it is to, say, Florida here as well. Where were you during the hurricane when Katrina hit?
I was up north because I'm from New Orleans. My dad and a couple of sisters have been living in New Orleans. I'm back here now, but I wasn't here when Katrina hit. But, you know, one of the things about New Orleans and this Gulf Coast area is that we're used to the idea of storms and turbulence. So when I was a kid and we left Washington, D.C. after my dad finished his PhD program at Howard University, that summer we returned was 1965, and a short few weeks later, we were hit by a storm called Hurricane Betsy. So that was my Katrina, if you will. As bad as Katrina was, Hurricane Betsy was bad in some other ways because we didn't have some of the infrastructure in place that we had in place for Katrina. But obviously, what was done between Betsy, Camille, and Katrina was not good enough to handle what eventually happened. And we're still dealing with the aftermath of Katrina. Usually, for those who don't know, when you're hit by the hurricane, it's actually not the hurricane that causes the worst damage. It's the surge and the water and the aftermath that causes the real damage.
Thank you, and I'm sure we'll have more questions. Makran says, "Namaste, positively near a rainbow near the Empire State Building." So he's talking about that. And Nikita is watching from Hyderabad, India. Please keep making these, she says, about the videos. And Dilip's watching from New Mumbai. So lots of places. And now you have friends in all those places. And Nikita is saying to our producer, Vandy Menon, is that you? So she's asking. So people are making connections here. And there's so many comments. I want to make sure that, Will, you did your part. You've shared this on your platforms.
Yes, I'm still sharing more.
Okay.
And, so it should be out there. I've even waved to some people.
Great. And Stefan says, Sunday positivity, wouldn't miss it. Here from Ramsey, New Jersey. Hi, Will. Thanks for sharing tonight. And Makran says, I was in NOLA after Katrina, Rita rebuilding, was at LAMS in New York, New Jersey forum. Lots of people here watching from different places. It's pretty cool. Our producer, Rose Horowitz, is watching. Rose Horowitz, 31 from Connecticut.
Oh, yeah. Hey, Rose.
Yeah, please follow her on Twitter.
Yeah,
Ron's working from the Upper West Side.
Yeah, that's a pretty cool part of New York. New York is just so fabulous. There are a lot of nice parts to New York City.
Jonathan says, any plans to rename Lee Circle in New Orleans?
Oh, Jonathan, you know you're trying to start some mess now. Actually, the newspaper office, when I am reporting from there, is a short few steps from the old Lee Circle. So for those who are unfamiliar with New Orleans, St. Charles Avenue is a major thoroughfare from downtown on to uptown. The elbow is at what used to be known as Lee Circle. So General Lee was up there until former Mayor Mitch Landrieu had it removed. So the circle has not been renamed at this point. And our local protesters have been concentrating on other Confederate enslaved connected statues and buildings and names. And so it's more about the removal at this point, not the renaming quite yet, with the exception of Jefferson Davis Parkway and the idea that's floating around with a great deal of support is to name that street after former Xavier University president, Dr. Norman Francis.
Thank you for that update. People are now quoting you and posting, and Radian has linked to your Muckrack article so that people can look that up.
Yes, please do.
Shiva is watching from Cupertino. Have you been?
Boy, it's been decades since I've been to Cupertino. That's wonderful to see somebody from out that way. Thank you so much for joining. I hope everything's going well out there.
Renee is watching, and Renee's a great friend of the show. Nishant is watching from Punjab. Radian is linking to your bios from the University of New Orleans. So there's no hiding. Look at this. He's posting all your links. And
oh, my goodness.
Radian says,
yeah,
I love New Orleans.
I joined Loyola University in New Orleans as professor in residence in the fall. And it's been a great partnership. Looking forward to continuing some work this summer and getting rolling in the fall when the students come back with social distancing.
Well, yeah, we want to certainly hear about that. Radian says, I love New Orleans for the history and the food. I look forward to going back someday. And the food there is amazing. The music, everything is great. You and I spent some time together just in the fall for the ONA conference. And we were right near that amazing street with all the nightlife there, which is just great. But I have a very important question to ask you, maybe the toughest question you'll ever get. What is the right pronunciation? New Orleans, New Orleans, New Orleans. Well, what are the different, and how do different people say it, and what does it mean when you say it one way versus another?
Okay, so if you're from this city, you're most likely going to say New Orleans. If you are singing it, however, you're going to say New Orleans if you're singing it in song or singing it in conversation. If you are from someplace else and you refer to it as Nolans, we know you're not from here.
So one more time, the right pronunciation is
New Orleans.
New Orleans. Okay, so you want to get that extra syllable in there.
Yeah, now that would be for the more strict and educated. If you're just saying it, it's like New Orleans.
Okay, got it.
New Orleans.
Okay. It still sounds difficult and complicated. Macron says lower Ninth Ward is still in bad shape. They have been thinning the black voting blocks it left behind.
Well, there's truth to that. I grew up in Gentilly in the lower Ninth Ward. Matter of fact, I just wrote about the lower Ninth Ward not that long ago because CVS after Katrina was the only national retail brand in that part of the city. And just a short few weeks ago, earlier this month, actually, CVS announced that they were closing the store. Now, normally I would be, very upset about that because it's about a 13,000 square foot building. Meant a lot to have a national brand return to that part of the city. But the reality is that the lower Ninth Ward is somewhere between a quarter or a third of the population of what it used to be. And it is a older population base now. When I was growing up and going to elementary school there and then going to junior high school just across the canal, it was a more diverse and much more vibrant place. We had our troubles, like a number of city neighborhoods, but it was nothing like what it looks like now. I mean, we're probably down to about 5,000 people there now. And that's just not a lot when you're trying to run a building like CVS or other national retailers. And just to give you an example, I went there on a Friday night intentionally after work. And when I went there, I didn't really have to go there, but I wanted to buy some things and take a look around. And for the entirety of the time that I was there, I was the only customer in the building.
And that makes it tough, right? So
that makes it tough. And on any given day, you're talking about a building that size, a business that size, with no more than $300, $400, $500 in receipts. That's kind of tough.
Yeah, it's hard to believe. I mean, one of the complaints about a lot of urban areas is that there are too many chain stores and not enough mom and pop stores. But you're saying even that's not there in that place.
Well, there are some that are making a go of it, and happy to see that some are in small storefronts or sharing spaces. That's not the same as what you can do with pricing at a national level or even a regional level. So I'm prayerful and hopeful that the community will get together and figure out what some options might be for the business and economic development, as well as other types of community development in that part of the city. And just more context, that part of the city is below sea level, and so with heavy storms, there's a lot of flooding, and with major storms and hurricanes, there's frequently a lot of damage.
Thank you for telling us that and sharing, and so that people can understand. Mark is watching from Durham, North Carolina. You've been?
Whoa, that's another part of the Raleigh, Durham, Cary, Chapel Hill market. Can get in trouble by just saying Raleigh, Durham, which is the airport, the international airport there. but I enjoyed my time at the News and Observer and had great times and good music in Durham and good food. And it's a very important part of that whole Triangle region. Very much enjoyed my time there.
Mark says he's a big fan of Zydeco and other great blues music from New Orleans.
Oh,
and,
yeah.
And he says, please explain to folks the difference between Cajun and Creole lifestyles.
Okay, well, you're going to have some differences of opinion about this, but essentially the Cajun influence is going to it came from Canada and the French Canadians down into the Louisiana Purchase and what is now Louisiana. And Creole is going to be more from Spain and France and Haiti. And those influences coming in from the East and from the Caribbean. So there's a bit of a mix in depending on what part of the state that you're in. But you won't see a whole lot of Black folks saying, come and get Cajun food, because that's not what they cook. So in the Acadiana region in Lafayette and that part of the state, you're going to have Cajun. Matter of fact, let me just mention Lafayette. People focus on New Orleans because it's the most populous city in the state, and Baton Rouge is the state capital. But Lafayette, you can go to Lafayette and see street names in French, and you can actually hear people speaking French or Creole in that part.
That's fascinating, and I think that's one of the reasons why people get to know and watch these shows that they hear from experts who are joining us from all over the world. I know you haven't seen this, but I just wanted to show you these numbers that give you a sense of this show, so you can understand where what we've done with this program. We've had in our first 100 shows, we've had 1 million plus viewers, and we've had 201 guests, including 124 women. I'm very proud of that. We were able to focus on that to make sure we have good representation and diversity of all kinds, and speakers from 12 countries and 45 cities. But when you look at that map, you see some continents not represented. We haven't had any guests from Africa, any guests from South America. In part, Will, that was because in the early days, if you remember, all the news was about Europe and the tragedy in Europe and East Asia. So we were focusing there. And now Brazil is right up there as second only to the United States in the crisis that they are facing over there. So let's now go back to Will and talk to him about some of the other folks watching. And also we have lots of questions for you. Rose says, hi, Will, I see you work for KnightRidder. Which paper? I worked for JOC.com a long time ago when it was published by KnightRidder. We were always reading trade and shipping news from the Times-Picayune.
Yeah, so I worked for 2 KnightRidder newspapers, the Philadelphia Inquirer in Philadelphia and the Post-Tribune in Gary, Indiana. So my KnightRidder career started after I moved from Gannett in South Jersey across the Schuylkill River to go to the Delaware River, to go over to Philadelphia and work at the Philadelphia Inquirer, and spent more than a decade there, and then had the opportunity to go to KnightRidder's paper in Gary, Indiana to be managing editor and then editor out that way. So I am familiar with JOC. I know it means Journal of Commerce. And I'm very familiar with the type of work that was done. It was very, very focused, niche publication, and the readers counted on it quite a bit. And the Times-Picayune in days of gone by provided quite a bit of shipping and transport news because of the port here. It was a great deal of importance.
Thank you. Stefan says, I've never been to New Orleans, but I can't wait to visit one day and meet you, of course, Will. So this is great.
Love to have you come and visit. Just don't visit right now with the pandemic. We're trying to do our best.
Stay where you are, right? Mr. Sutton, I saw on LinkedIn that you're a former Boy Scout and have worked with the organization for many decades. In fact, you're an Eagle Scout in 1970. Was your original troop mixed race, mostly black, mostly white?
Well, actually, it's interesting you say that and note that, because once an Eagle Scout, you're always an Eagle Scout. Very proud that was able to achieve that rank with Scoutmaster E.J. Hendricks at St. David's Roman Catholic Church in the Lower Ninth Ward, when that community was more vibrant and active than it is now. There's still some good things going on there with some good people, but it's not quite the same as it was. So at that time, it was a all-black troop, Troop 155, and very happy to say that I was not the first Eagle Scout. I was not the second, the third, the fourth, or the fifth. Our Scoutmaster had a track record for producing Eagle Scouts, and it stunned a lot of people, because this was a small troop, a poor troop from a relatively poor area, but he was very, very disciplined and determined to get the most out of each and every scout. And some of us were able to get up to that level of Eagle, and even be a part of the Order of the Arrow, which is a special camping organization within Scouting.
Thank you. And let's see. Well, who else? We have so many people commenting here. Twyla says, "I love my Clifton Chenier."
All right. Well, that's great. And hope you come to New Orleans if you haven't been.
What is that?
Well, how do I explain this? So this is an author of sorts, and it's I'm a little rusty at the moment because we have a number of people who write and have pen names, if you will, and I'm going to leave it at that for now.
Yeah, it says he's a Louisiana French-speaking native of Leonville,
Yeah,
Louisiana, near Appaloosas. Was an eminent performer and recording artist of Zydeco, and which arose from Cajun and Creole music. He played the accordion and won a Grammy Award in 1983.
Yeah, I'm not sure that's the entirety of his name, but that might be true. Yeah.
Okay. All right. So Twyla will sort that out for us in the comments.
Great.
And now we're getting into some questions. Before that, I would love if you would stand up and show us your shirt.
Oh, really? Okay.
All right. Yeah, just bend down just a little. We want to get a nice shot of that. There you go. Perfect. You're modeling it well. And it says Black Journalists Matter. So let's talk about that, and let's get into our conversation. This was just the warm-up. Now starts the hard part here, Will.
Okay.
And if you wouldn't mind, now that you've sat down, could you just adjust the laptop a little bit so we just bring it down, lower the lid a little bit, just so we get a tighter shot on you, please? Thank you. There you go. That's good. Thank you so much. Yeah, this is live TV, so we don't have the affectations of television. And we must ask you about that beautiful painting behind you.
Yeah, that's a Jacob Lawrence piece. My wife and I really enjoy art and the arts, and so we have collected some pieces through the years. This particular piece was part of a fundraiser some years ago with the National Association of Black Journalists. Really like Jacob Lawrence. He's one of our great Black master artists, and really like the vibrancy of his colors and his focus on Black folks doing things of academic and educational interest, as well as in the fields. And some people might be familiar with his Vibration series, but he didn't focus on one genre or one type of Black person. So as you can see, this is very well dressed and studied, and there with book.
Okay, thank you for that. And folks, you all know someone in the world who would benefit from this conversation. Please tag them. Please hit share right now so that they can join us and continue to learn, like I am, from this incredible conversation with Will Sutton. And everybody, please follow Will on Twitter. He's at Will Sutton. And I know that your friends will be very grateful to get a chance to hear everything that he has to say on so many important topics as we go through the questions that are coming in from around the world. So Will, let's talk a little bit about your work and talk to us about this moment. There's so much going on, breaking news, as you know, and you've lived in Mississippi. Mississippi has just voted. The legislature has 37-14 to remove the last symbol of the Confederacy on a state flag in America, and that's on the Mississippi flag. Talk about that, please. Does that mean that the governor will sign it into law? What does that mean exactly?
Yeah, my dad's from Monticello, Mississippi, so I didn't live there, but I visited quite a bit. I have relatives up and down Mississippi in the Delta, the Jackson area, and southern Mississippi. So my Mississippi roots are very direct. But the governor has said recently that if the legislature were to pass it, that he would sign it into law, which is only the first step, because that means that flag would be altered so that the Confederacy symbol would be removed. They haven't said whether that section would be replaced or they would come up with an entire new flag. But that is a big, big deal. For decades now, people in Mississippi were, a lot of people in Mississippi were staunchly in favor of holding on to as many things Confederate as possible. And that included that flag and wanting to acknowledge that part of Mississippi's heritage. Uh, for those who don't know, Mississippi is heavily, heavily Black. And also a great deal, a number of poor people. So it can be hard to get some things done through the legislative process, though there are a great number of Black elected officials the way the laws are set up. But the idea that this is happening at this time is proof positive that when voices are raised together in unison at the same time for the same cause, good things can happen. Uh, I do not think it's much of a stretch to say that there is no way in hell that this flag would be changing but for the Black Lives Matter movement at this time, and but for the diversity of this Black Lives Matter movement happening at this time. I don't think there's any other way that would be happening. And it's happening, don't be mistaken, it is not happening because they think it's time. It's happening because of the economic impact, with sports conferences and others saying that they will pull out of Mississippi, that they will not host events in Mississippi. And the Mississippi business people are saying, hold on now, we need to take care of this, because they don't want to lose that business. That's the real reason this is happening. But it will not be happening without the pressure and demonstrations and protests.
And in a way, I think of this as, with so many other things happening at the same time, NASCAR taking off or not allowing Confederate flags, lots of blackface episodes of TV archives being removed. The name of Woodrow Wilson being taken off at Princeton University.
That's huge.
These are huge things.
That's huge.
Yeah, and I think that we should all say, as we should, that this is because of the deaths of George Floyd, Breonna Taylor, Ahmaud Arbery, like all of these people, their sacrifice in part has resulted in this. And of course, every death is in vain, but there is some positive aspects of what they sacrificed and what has sparked the uprising all over this country. And that's what we're seeing here. Would you agree?
Absolutely, positively. And there's no one killing that is strictly responsible for this. It's an accumulation, and people are tired and fed up, angry and pissed off. That said, George Floyd, the impetus of that killing, with the video and the young lady who stood her ground, teenager in Minneapolis, to film and to not stop, She didn't know what was going to happen, but she knew something bad was happening, and she was determined to capture it on video. And thank God she did, because that was dead wrong in my view, and I know others might argue that was a modern day public lynching. The guy was handcuffed on the ground, three knees and sets of knees on him, and there was no reason for anyone to be arrested, charged, tried, and killed on the street in one 8 minute and 46-second period. None at all. That is not about color. That is not about race. That's just immoral, ethically wrong, and against the law. That is unlawful. It doesn't matter about the guy's background. It doesn't matter in this case that he was black. But we know from watching what happened that it's very clear that this was racist in what happened. And that's wrong. It's got to be stopped. And the laws have to be changed. And that's a key reason why a lot of these actions are taking place.
Thank you. And it's so hard to even talk about this as we're thinking of everything going on. I don't know if you've had a chance to read this yet, but this is the cover of the New York Times Magazine, a story that's caught fire all over the internet, and it's called "What is Owed" by Nicola Hannah-Jones. And if Black lives are to matter in America, the nation must pay its debts. America has paid debts in its past, including to Japanese Americans who were given money as reparations for what happened during World War II. At this moment, where are you on this, on understanding what the possibilities are here for reparations? Do you think they're needed? Will they be given? Too complicated to figure out? Where are you in that continuum that we're all going through and thinking about all the time?
Well, I think it's important for us to consider a range of possibilities, and for some people, the one word reparations is going to make a difference. The one word defund is going to make a difference. But like so many words, those words mean different things to different people. So if it takes the word defund and reparations to get legislation that removes racist laws, structures, systematic deficiencies, then I'm all for the reparations and for the defunding. I don't think the idea of just strictly saying defunding is something that's going to sweep the nation and going to happen in every municipality, every county, and every parish, because in the strictest form of that word, it would mean scratching everything that's there and starting anew with something new and different. People like to point to the idea of Camden, New Jersey. Well, I had relatives in Camden, New Jersey. I've been to Camden, New Jersey. I covered Camden, New Jersey. I covered Camden County, New Jersey. And basically, Camden City is black and Camden County is white. And what happened is the county took over the Camden City Police. So just let that ruminate for a minute. So we can say defund, but we have to examine what that means in the different places. So you can defund the police in the strictest manner of that word in New York City, in Atlanta, in Miami, in Chicago, in New Orleans, and then who gets the money and who gets the responsibility. So I'm not saying I'm opposed to defunding altogether. What I'm saying is that's going to mean different things in different places. And reparations is one of those things where it matters a lot. What are we talking about? We got a chance to touch on that during the Democratic primary race, where there were a number of candidates, and some of them touched on the idea of reparations. It didn't get very deep because it didn't last long enough in that fluid set of conversations. but there are different ways to approach what anyone might consider reparations. You can actually get some support for some forms of reparations simply by not calling it reparations. If that's what it takes, then that's something that I think we want to be open to. But I don't think we want to be afraid of these words and find out what these words mean to people who have been studying these issues and who care deeply about these things, if it's going to be for the better. There's no question that we need more funding in communities like the Lower Ninth Ward, that we need to not just change things with a flag in the state of Mississippi, but look at pockets in the state capital of Jackson and see communities where they need help. To look at the Delta and see where people still live in and near cotton fields and fish farms, and they need help. Those are things, and you know, emotionally, for the moment, I could care less what you call it. Get the people some help, and we can worry about what we call it, because I want to see the action of what difference it's going to make.
Thank you, Will. I would also say my own ambivalence about the word defunding is that instead of saying reform, you say defund, then people who want an excuse not to move forward are going to say that that's a problem. They hear the word abolish when you hear defund, and that's what you were talking about, Will, as well.
That's
One
right.
of the things that I think about is the word global warming versus climate change. If 30 years ago they had started with the word climate change, I believe we would be in a different place today in people participating and understanding and fighting back against climate change. By calling it global warming, you gave Trump and everyone else who every time it's cold, it says, what global warming? And that's one of the things that we have sadly seen with our very ignorant countrymen, unfortunately, is all I can say. Let's go in and see some of these other comments. Lots of folks coming in here and posting comments. Let's see here. My friend Mark says, my friend Mel Menton played, and if memory serves him correctly, he came to the Bull Durham Blues Festival. He's talking about Clifton earlier.
Absolutely, yeah, that's right. Yeah, the Bull Durham Blues Festival is quite a nice event.
Twyla says, love New Orleans. And Mark says, the Wild Magnolias and Rosie Leday are also amazing.
Love them. If you get a chance to see them, definitely tune in. It's well worth the time.
And look who's here. Cassidy's here. Cassidy says,
hey, Cassidy.
Will never forget my empty Met experience with the two of you for Dow Jones News Fund. I worked at the Metropolitan Museum of Art as the chief digital officer. We used to do these empty Met tours, and you brought your students. Actually, you brought your students to my place of work every year for a decade plus. And we used to come to Columbia, and then when I went to the Met, we started talking about art and covering art and covering nonprofits. And you asked tough questions. Your students were always great. And we went on an empty Met tour, and that was meaningful for me, as it clearly was to Cassidy and to everybody who had the chance to attend. And I think that that's great that she still remembers that, which is awesome.
Those were some great experiences and a wonderful opportunity. And for those who don't catch the context of that, so literally the Met was empty, but for a few staffers, and we only got in because of my friend Sree early in the morning before other people started reporting for work. And so essentially you're a mini tour group without all the other tourists in this incredible worldwide recognized museum. And it was just an incredible experience. It was wonderful. Thank you so much.
Thank you. And since we're talking about art, I should point out my T-shirt says Art for Life. We were comparing T-shirts earlier, and that T-shirt was designed by this man who died the day before yesterday. This is Milton Glaser, who died, the famous, legendary graphic designer who designed the I Love New York logo, and he designed this. And I was at an event where I had the honor of meeting him just in September. He was 91 years old. He died on his birthday, 91st birthday, 2 days ago. And this is at the Rubin Museum of Art. And this is him holding that T-shirt, and that's the co-founder Shelley Rubin, and this is me wearing that T-shirt. So I've been wearing it, but taking it off in between for my live shows so that I could talk about Milton Glaser and what he did in terms of changing the world of graphic design and making it. In the New York Times, they said he injected wit, whimsy, and expertise. And I think that's a good obit line for any of us if we can bring wit, whimsy, and expertise to whatever field we're in. And he certainly did that. So that's great. And there's Cassidy's comment. Thank you very much, Cassidy. Shiva says, great to learn about New Orleans from an authentic source. Used to read the News and Observer when we lived in Durham. I was visiting faculty at NCSU and read the Philadelphia Inquirer when I was a grad student at Penn State. Look at all these connections.
Oh, wow. That's great. Yeah. Great. Yeah. And, I lived off of 50th in Baltimore and also in Spring Garden when I worked at the Philadelphia Inquirer.
My brother Hartionio was an editor at the Asbury Park Press, which is a Gannett paper. And Asbury Park is obviously a very famous part of New Jersey. And with so many other comments coming in, Vandana says, I was planning to visit New Orleans this year. Hopefully that happens one day. And
we will welcome you here.
Yeah. And Twyla says, Will, how many of your white friends engage you in conversation in recent events?
A few. I have had those conversations and communications, and like I think any number of other Black folks who have been contacted by folks who are friendly enough and comfortable enough to ask questions about what's going on. And in my case, I also have had the opportunity as a columnist to write about this issue and be in touch with readers of all backgrounds, but particularly white readers who have been engaged with me based on some of the work that I've done. Sree just called up my All Lives Matter column, which is the one that in my several months here has probably been read by the most people. And I have to say, honestly, I wrote it because there was just so much on my heart, so much on my mind. I was so upset about All Lives Matter and Black Lives Matter and people not understanding the difference and the connection, and that All Lives Matter would not exist but for Black Lives Matter. And I wrote it and wrote it again and went through it and wrote it again. And I turned it in, and I wasn't sure, first of all, if my editor would be cool with it and would understand it. But he wrote me just one word back, and he said powerful, which is not the usual editor and writer relationship. I strongly believe that every writer, every editor needs a good editor. But he was so touched by it. And then we went back and just changed a few things. But I heard from people in South America, Australia, Canada, across the United States, California, Michigan, Washington, D.C., New Jersey, the Carolinas, Georgia, Florida. I mean, it just is incredible. And so many people read it, and they said that they now understood Black Lives Matter and that they were sharing it with friends who they didn't think understood. And it certainly was my intention to touch people and to help people understand. I had no idea that it would have this type of impact. And I think it's one of those things where if you are not a part of a certain culture, you don't understand how different things touch you because you haven't had that experience. You haven't had those sets of experiences. You haven't seen it affect someone that you love. And what I did was write about a personal experience, just one. There've been a number, but just one interaction with police. And this was when I was younger, and also to express how I was feeling and friends of mine and family members are feeling, and try to get people to understand. I think so often when we use words like black, brown, white, people automatically get a guard up because they're making assumptions about where you might be going with something. And I think that's been the case with Black Lives Matter. But what's happened is it started in 2013, moved into with Trayvon Martin, moved into 14 with Mike Brown and that killing. And people were a little standoffish. And truth be told, Black folks were standoffish in a number of spaces because Black Lives Matter and what is this about? And I'm not really down with the marching. And yes, it's horrible. And but when that video of George Floyd got out there and people didn't have to go and demonstrate, they could see and have that visceral reaction. And in rather quick succession, other people were being killed. Um, it was a lot. It was a lot. And I think a lot of us got to a different point very quickly in a short few weeks to get over the idea of Black Lives Matter with the word Black, to say that Black lives matter, they should matter, they must matter. And that's what we needed to get to the point where we are now and where we need and must move. This is not just simply about certain Black lives mattering. It's not about just only Black lives mattering, but for too long, Black lives have not mattered. And it's been clear that Black lives have not mattered. So, one of the wonderful things about where we are in this space and time is the diversity of the demonstration, the diversity of the voices, the diversity of the protest. And it just warms my heart to look at the evening news or look at cable news and to see demonstrations where there's hardly a Black person in the crowd. And they're holding signs for Black Lives Matter. And they're arguing for criminal justice reform. And they're arguing for equity. That's what we needed. It's just that we were so comfortable in our spaces with whatever we're earning and wherever we're living that we were afraid or just too comfortable to step up and say more needs to be done. So if you want a positive moment on this positivity evening, out of this bad stuff, there's some good things happening because this is going to be better. I am not one to say all of the things that need to be changed must happen now, will happen in the next few days and next few weeks and the next months. Honestly, I don't believe that. But I do believe that we will see significant changes rather quickly, witness Mississippi, and that will make things better for my son who is 25, for my grandson who is 7 months, for Black folks and Black men who look like me. All of it won't disappear, but will be at better places in more spaces and be more comfortable and willing to talk and have conversations, say what's on our mind, and have the type of impact that we should.
Let's talk about this article. Siri knows why Black Lives Matter. Do you? Please tell us about this article.
Okay, well, I'm an Apple guy. Um, and I've not been a really big user of Siri, but I use Siri periodically. And with all of this going on, this came after my All Lives Matter column. So I asked Siri, do Black Lives Matter? Why Black Lives Matter? And I was surprised with the answer, which means somebody was paying attention to what was going on. And Siri's answer was enlightening, to put it lightly, that yes, Black lives do matter. Black lives matter. And went on to quote some statistics and went on to share what was happening in the world. And I asked Siri, do all lives matter? And I was very pleased with Siri's answer to say, basically, in so many words, of course, all lives matter, but it is not the same as Black Lives Matter. And when I got that, along with some other things I was thinking about, I thought that would make a good follow-up column to my All Lives Matter. I did get some pushback from folks who feel like it's a corporate takeover by progressive lefties, and that we're shutting down their free thought and their thinking. And I respond to as many of these emails and direct messages as I can. And I want people to understand that if you love someone and you know something is offensive, are you going to keep saying that if you really love them? Not that we love everybody, but when we go to class or we go to work, do we want to be surrounded by people saying offensive things? No. When we take a bus or stop at a gas station, do we want to see and hear offensive things? No. Do you? Well, neither do I. Neither do I. And we've got to stop this crap. Educate me. If there's something that I know is offensive to you and you explain it to me, probably in just a few words, I'm not going to do that anymore. And that's what we want. That's what we need.
And you know who has been someone who doesn't understand all Black Lives Matter. You know, that is our vice president. Of course, our president, we had no doubt, but our vice president keeps trying to pretend he is somehow better at some of this than the president. And here it is on the screen on TV today. He refused to say Black Lives Matter. He immediately went to the the anti, the extreme left and take over and this and that. And John Dickerson, to his credit, kept saying, "Can you just say all black? Can you all just say Black Lives Matter? Forget the movement. Just say Black Lives Matter." And he wouldn't say it. He went to all lives matter, including the pro-choice conversation. He went everywhere, but wouldn't say 3 words: Black Lives Matter. This president has refused to say it. This vice president has refused to say it. It's the same tendency that keeps them from wearing a mask when they should. At least Pence wears it on occasion. But this is the situation we're in this country, and it is tragic, and it is unacceptable. By the way, just to move to the health conversation for just a minute, Will, for those of us in the Northeast who suffered through 100 days of shutdown, while other parts of the country were demanding that they be allowed to open. Some other states also played, were on the right side of history, starting with this president pushing and pushing and pushing for openings. You remember that when we had white masked men storming Capitol houses with machine guns, demanding that their right to tattoo parlors and haircuts immediately, you remember that many of us said, gee, what if Black people had done the same thing? What would happen? And we understood what would happen. When the protest came, I didn't see one protester who was leading or participating openly carrying a gun. Were there other things that happened? Was there trouble? Yes. Were fires set? Yes. Were there other? Yes, all of that happened. But you didn't see people carrying AR-15s, African-American or anyone, on that side of the argument, going out there and doing any of that. And that's what's so frustrating, to see all of this, that every death that has happened. Our friend Rahadian, who's on the show, you see his comments. His mother died 2 months to the day yesterday. And he commented in a beautiful note publicly. He said that he was angry that we have not done what his mother sacrificed for. She was a nurse, by the way, for all those years, and then she passed away because of COVID. And was her death, did we learn nothing from her death, or 125,000 deaths? And this is where I get so angry. We don't want it to be political, but only in America, in all the countries in the world, is wearing a mask a political statement. It's been turned into one. And if this president cares about his people, as he says, right, he could just wear a mask. He could say MAGA on it. I don't care. But he's refusing to do it. Will, talk me off this ledge here, please.
Well, I was very pleased with someone that I don't have a great deal of agreement with on a number of things, but to see Dick Cheney wearing a mask. I don't know if you saw.
No, I did not. And you know, Dick Cheney has 100 lives, right? He's had like endless heart attacks and endless numbers of surgery.
Absolutely. He's got a number of underlying and related health conditions, and he didn't have to do that. I mean, clearly he's making a statement on top of making the statement that wearing a mask is a good idea. And he's making another statement because he knows he's a prominent Republican in the president's party. But we need more people like that to wear masks, since it's clear what type of people in Washington won't be wearing masks, so that we can do the societal best for each other in our communities, counties, and parishes, and in our states. Unless and until we get a vaccine, we've got to do what we can do individually and collectively to protect ourselves and to protect each other. And the mask is only a part of it. There's still the physical distancing, because I want to stay socially connected as we're doing this, but we need to be physically distanced. And I have gone to some places and turned around because I saw people who did not live in the same household pod gathering and yucking it up and just having a good time. And that's not what we're supposed to be doing. And it's just going to cause more problems as we move along. And I think we're seeing that, including in my own state, Louisiana, with the uptick now that we've moved from phase 1 into phase 2. And now our governor has had to delay phase 3 because the numbers are not going in the right direction.
And that's certainly one of the problems. Look at this. The president tweets someone yelling white power, retweets or tweets him, and then they delete it. This is not even a dog whistle anymore. This is full-blown, direct yelling. In this case, somebody yelling white power, and the president retweets it. And then the excuse was, oh, he didn't hear it. He didn't hear that phrase. It's in the first 10 seconds of the video. It's not like, the 1-hour video. And, like if somebody retweets what you say, Bill, Will, here, this our 1-hour video, something, you can't stand by everything you say. But if you're tweeting something in the first 10 seconds, you've definitely heard it. And that's where we're seeing the disaster that is happening. I also want to show you my I don't have a column, but I have a newsletter. And my newsletter today was that the U.S. is in the middle of the first wave. This is not the second wave. And this is what we should worry. Europe, look at Prague. Don't we wish we could do this in the way they are able to do it? And here is a couple of charts that are in the, by the way, if anyone would like to get my newsletter, just email me, Sree@Sree.net. Would love to add you to our weekly newsletter. We look at tech and life and society. And then look here, look at this. So sad. This is where Europe is.
Look at those numbers.
Yeah. Just amazing. The blue is America, and look at Europe. And this is a failure, Will, of our leadership at many levels, not just the president, starting with the president, but the governors who didn't listen. In Texas, they pushed for the opening in May, and now they've closed everything again. And they've said, we don't need to wear a mask. And now look at, this is just so frustrating to think about. By the way, people are still commenting. Let's get on here and see. Mitra Kalita says, I love Will so much. And Will.
Love you too.
Yeah, Mitra is, as you know, head of digital of large parts of CNN. And she's the godmother of my twins and a dear friend and amazing journalist herself. Rose says, so honored to meet you on the show tonight. Robert Anthony, who's been a guest on my show multiple times, says, I can't believe it's been almost 20 years since you headed the National Association of Black Journalists. Your
Yes,
reasoned
good to tell.
voice, your reasoned voice is still needed and appreciated. Mark Lee says, I coined a term called accidental good, which means good things coming out of bad things. That is the improvement of nature due to us being home and the positive changes that could not have happened years ago happening now. So all of these comments
Yeah, that's right, Mark.
are still coming in. Shiva says, I've been thinking that the young lady who courageously took the video of George Floyd's murder deserves the Pulitzer. She has changed this country's discourse on race. Would the journalism experts agree? Well, let's turn to you.
Well, probably not, because I don't think what she was doing at the time was an action taken as a part of journalism. But let me just say, having said that, that one of the things that has continued to shift in the last 20 years, 10 years, 8 years is what is journalism. As my friend here knows, there was no reason for an online news association because there was no news online. And then there was. And there was no desire to include social media in the early days because it was strictly social and it wasn't news. And then it was. And there was no desire or interest on the part of a number of national awards, including the Pulitzer, to include anything that was audio, anything that was digital other than print. And then there was. So it might not be her time this time, but as we continue to move through time and consider what journalism is and isn't, there might be opportunities for something along those lines. What do you think, Sree?
That's an interesting question. We'll see. You know how much the smartphone is recognized. Somebody has said that Steve Jobs should get a posthumous Nobel Prize for what he has done for African American folks by having all this video. And in fact, I did a fabulous. I mean, I had an interview with a fabulous professor of journalism that I recommend everybody watch. This is episode 93. Today we're on episode 109, so you can go back on my YouTube, youtube.com/Sreenet, and Alyssa Richardson, PhD, Dr. Ali Rich on Twitter. She's the author of Bearing Witness While Black, African American Smartphones and the New Protest Journalism. She's a scholar of race, digital activism, and the press at USC. Everyone go back and follow her on Twitter. And her book just came out. It looks like it's like a monograph written for what's going on now, but it's a book obviously she wrote well before this crisis. So everyone should take a look at that. And the comments are still coming in. Radyan says that my mother, Teresita, had been a nurse for 50 years, retiring in 2007. At the time of her death, in April 27, 2020, she had been in a nursing home for more than 3 years and had a diagnosis, and then she passed, and so directly connected to COVID. And the vector was either a staff member, a patient, or a patient's family member. Jonathan says condolences. And Radian says 45 is this generation's George Wallace. If you can, for a second, if you wouldn't mind just explaining that, we have a lot of international folks who wouldn't get the George Wallace reference.
George Wallace, Southern governor and segregationist, racist, advocated keeping the races apart, saw no need for black kids and white kids to go to school together, refused federal order to integrate, and even sought national office and got some strong support. So with someone making the connection between 45, otherwise known as President Trump, and George Wallace, that would be an indication that President Trump succeeded where George Wallace left off. So George Wallace did not succeed in becoming the U.S. president, but a number of the things that he was interested in seemed to be the types of things that in 2020, President Trump seems to be interested in pursuing and seeing that those things get done There are just so many things that are going on that don't get discussed or don't get covered as much because we have the pandemic going on, because of the Black Lives Matter protests and demonstrations. There's a lot going on that is happening because of 45's administration.
Can you talk about this?
Oh, sure. So for those who are unfamiliar with our local uh, beer brands, Dixie has been around for decades, and one of the things that got lost with Hurricane Katrina was the Dixie beer brand. And so a lot of people were saddened by the idea of Dixie going away by virtue of storm damage. The Bensons, Gail and Tom, they own the Saints, New Orleans Saints, and the New Orleans Pelicans, as well as car dealerships. And they wanted to bring the brand back. So in 2017, they brought the brand back. And this year, 2020, they created a business park, if you will, in a heavily black part of the city, New Orleans East. So great thing for that community, but it's Dixie beer and Dixie products. So incongruous with a lot of the experience and how a lot of us work there. Though there are black people who have been employed by Dixie beer over the years, it's not been something that's been very comfortable for a lot of us. So those who drank beer would drink Falstaff or Jack's locally and not drink Dixie. For a long time, Dixie beer included the Confederate flag on its cans and on its bottles. So with everything that's been going on across the nation and across our city and our state, on Friday morning, Gail Benson announced that she was going to change the brand name of their famous local beer.
Wow, this is
And that is huge
yeah.
because they just spent millions of dollars to open up this business complex in New Orleans East with Dixie splattered all over the place. They did what most business owners would do. If you have multiple brands, you're going to advertise to your Pelicans fans, you're going to advertise the Saints. And with the Saints, you're going to advertise your Dixie beer. You're not going to have somebody else's beer in the stadium. You're going to have your beer in the stadium. And so Dixie is all over Mercedes-Benz Superdome. Well, that's going to be going away because they don't have a new name. They haven't said how it will be determined, but it will be open to community and stakeholder feedback. And that beer brand, with all of its history, will no longer be the name. And that is huge. And it is so big that some of you may know the name Wendell Pierce, an actor, a black actor who's from New Orleans, who's based here but travels the world for his acting and theatrical performances and work. But he's part owner of a black radio station here, WBOK. Wendell Pierce interrupted programming and went on the local black radio talk station and read Gail Benson's uh, statement himself. That's how big a deal this was for a lot of us here, because it's a big deal. It's very offensive. We would cringe if we went to a party or a gathering and they were serving Dixie beer. It just wasn't very comfortable, but it was spread throughout the community here. And I wrote a column off the news on Friday, and I got quite a bit of reaction, some positive reaction and some negative reaction, including people wanting to explain to me the history of the word Dixie being a currency, and which negates the idea of what Dixie culturally means across not just New Orleans, but the South and the rest of the nation. We know what Dixie means, and it is not a currency. It is not a monetary item.
Here is Wendell Pierce. Some of you will recognize him. He's been in so many movies. He's in the Jack Ryan series. And here's his pinned tweet: "We are done dying." And there is, this is that moment. We also saw that people are stepping up and doing all kinds of things that we may not have seen them do before. And that's what we are. I told you we wanted you for 45 minutes or 50 minutes. Look at the time. It's 10:20. I know
that's crazy.
It's 9:20 for you. I don't want to. It's not 2 hours since we spoke, but with the time difference. And Wendell was on the wire, and Treme,
yes,
as Rajan. And Thomas has by the way, Rajan also pointing out the Dixie Chicks are now just the Chicks, and Lady Mellum is now Lady A. And many of us who don't know any better used to think that Dixie was just a kind of a benign term for the South. It didn't have anything to do with racism because we didn't know any better. Nobody taught us. And now we know. I mean, obviously, we've known for a while now, but that's what matters. I mean, there's Dixie cups. I don't know if they have anything to do with the South, but we just hear these words and we think they're benign. I remember, Will, as a little kid, I arrived in this country as a 9-year-old, and I loved the Dukes of Hazzard and the General Lee. I never thought of it as a racist symbol that it had the cross of the stars and bars on the top of the car. I was an overprivileged Indian kid who arrived in this country knowing that I wouldn't be stopped the way you or your son would be stopped at my age in this city, and I could do whatever I wanted. And I loved the Dukes of Hazzard, and I'm ashamed to say that I did. I can't remember if there were any African-American characters in the Dukes.
I don't remember any. If they were probably bit parts, but I don't remember any.
And the caricatures, of course, were plenty. Thomas asks an important question, and this is, he says, can you address the language of defund the police? Could you clarify the concern about misrepresentation of reform agendas? After all, Republicans continue to willfully represent just Black Lives Matter, and many Democrats are smeared as socialists, including Biden of all people. Biden is not a socialist. Why not see the opportunity to move the Overton window?
Yeah, that's my good buddy from Penn in Philadelphia. Good to see you there, Guy. And he's always on top of these things and really pushing the envelope, to use the cliche. I think his point is a valid one. For people who are closer to the police reform struggle, defund has been a term that they have used for years. This is not a new thing. It's only new to those of us who are relatively new to this movement. So it's like being a part of a culture of whatever kind and having terms and phrases that are common or come to be developed. And I think that's an important part of Noah's point, is that you can allow folks to take your words from your culture and make them something that they're not. In the case of defund, I see his point, and I get the idea. I think by using the word defund, we may delay some of the changes that can happen and need to happen. And at least at the moment, on this day, at this time, I'm probably willing to forego the use of the word defund to have the more significant changes that need to be done. I certainly understand anyone holding on to that after years of work to get us to this point and to bring others of us along. And you're absolutely right about Republican language being something that is often co-opted or created to cause certain emotions and to rile up a base that is antithesis to what we're trying to get done.
And the Overton window, as you know, is a term that's used in kind of understanding public policy. It's generally what is the range of things that are generally acceptable to the population. And as you know, there was a time when marriage equality would be unheard of and impossible. Even, you might remember, Barack Obama was asked directly, "Are you in favor of equal rights for?" And he shifted. He said, "That's a higher." He said something like, "It's above my pay grade."
Aspirational, essentially.
Yeah,
And that was not something that was resolved before he became president.
yeah.
I mean, this was more finally resolved and a transition during his presidency. And that's true for a lot of us, if we're honest about where we might start versus where we might end. And as we move along in that continuum. And so this is yet another um, example of what might be possible. And I get back to the how fast is fast enough, because we have this moment now, this wonderful opportunity, and we want to take advantage of it and get as many things changed as quickly as possible before public sentiment starts changing and going in another direction, and before people start, quote unquote, getting tired or weighed down, so that the right, the just, the equitable things can be done and accomplished, especially those things that require votes.
That's, in a way, if you think about it, it's like the moral arc of the universe, bends towards justice, and you see that over time. There are things that, one of the things I learned doing these talks, as we've talked about, Will, that these are for the public to learn and the world to learn. Thousands of people watch these episodes, they learn, but it's also, Will, for me to learn and to understand that there was a time when African Americans at HBCUs didn't want to study African American studies, right? They believed
Absolutely.
that was, I mean, it's hard to even fathom that there were protests at HBCUs, historically black colleges and universities, against African American studies. And now you have African American studies at the most prestigious schools in the world, including HBCUs. So that's how life changes, people change. We hope for the better, right?
Absolutely.
And that's where we are. Shiva says, "How about de-escalate the police?"
Uh, Again, I think whatever the words are, that one of the things I think that's we're gonna see happen is, depending on the community, the language will be different. So I think there's some language that might work in Camden, New Jersey, that wouldn't work in Tucson, Arizona. And I think there's language that would work in New Orleans that's not going to work in Chicago. Some of it is the structure of government, culture. So there are de-escalate, I think, speaks more to the actions, and defunding speaks more about the money and the emphasis of what we want done.
Yeah. And Ellen says, "Yes, while I always found the Confederate flag offensive early on, I thought Dixie was just the South. Now I know." And there you have, you've taught someone who has been around a while, knows a lot. You taught them today. And in this day and age, well, even one person learning one thing is terrific. And you've taught thousands of people many, many, many things. I need to let you go. Please tell us your final thoughts for now, and I promise me you'll come back.
Sree, I'll be here for you. I am grateful for this opportunity. I've been writing my column at the Times-Picayune Advocate since the fall, since October. One of the things that I told my readers in print, and anybody who would listen, is that my goal is to educate, inform, to challenge, and to entertain. And I'm not going to achieve all of those things in any one column. I'm going to do that over the course of the body of work. But as I do that, I want to educate and inform, challenge, and entertain, but I'm also going to listen. And I realize this is a digital age. So I expect readers to come from almost anywhere. And that's one of the things that I found very clear when I wrote the All Lives Matter column. and I am engaging with people where they are, whatever space they are in. And I want to be able to provide a reasonable perspective and context, but I'm not going to walk away from things that I believe. I also know that I am human and I am open. So if you have something to share, I would like to hear it. I would like to listen. I too would like to learn. I too would like to be educated, informed, and challenged. If you got something entertaining, I'm interested in that too. So you can reach me at wsutton at theadvocate, all one word, .com, wsutton at theadvocate.com. I'm on Twitter and Facebook daily, and I'm on Instagram almost daily. On Instagram, I'm editor Will Sutton. On Twitter, I'm at Will Sutton. And I'm on LinkedIn as well. So look forward to hearing from some of you. I hope you'll follow me on Twitter. Look forward to seeing what you have to say and what you have to share. And if you have ideas, I welcome that very much. I'm looking forward, on a positive note, to a lot of significant changes, some of them very immediately, some of them in a matter of days or weeks or months or a short few years, because I feel confident that through my anger and frustration, my pain, my upsetness that I know I share with others, I genuinely believe that we're going to be better off by going through all of this. So thank you very much, Sree, and thank you to your viewers. I appreciate the opportunity, and I look forward to a better world.
Wow, thank you so much. One of the things I do, Will, on this episode, every episode, is we had Kimberly Crenshaw on, who's the professor who coined the term intersectionality. And she said to me, Sree, you must say their names all the time, every episode. So I'm doing that. Would you join me in saying their names if I put them on the screen?
Absolutely.
Thank you so much. I am honored that you would do this with me. This is something sacred that we are able to do. I use on the screen, as you'll see in a minute, this cover photograph of Time magazine. And you're seeing Titus Kaffer's painting. I know you love art, and very hard to look at, but we should not take our eyes away. And have you seen this photograph on the right? That's a photograph of a young George Floyd with his mother Larcinia, who would be killed 2 years, almost to the week, after she died, and would be buried next to him in Houston. So sad. So I'm going to pull up the names. I'm going to pull up the names, and if you would please, maybe you would start, and I will follow. You'll read a few names, and then I will read some, and we'll go back and forth. Is that okay?
Sure.
Please.
Trayvon Martin, Yvette Smith, Eric Gardner, Michael Brown, Laquan McDonald, Tanisha Anderson, Akai Gurley, Tamir Rice, Jerome Reed, Natasha McKenna, Eric Harris, Walter Scott, Freddie Gray, William Chapman, Sandra Bland, Darius Stewart, Samuel DuBois, Janet Wilson, Callan Rockamore, Alton Sterling from here in Louisiana, Philando Castile, Joseph Mann, Terrace Crutcher, Chad Robertson, Jordan Edwards, Aaron Bailey, Stephon Clark, Danny Ray Thomas, Antoine Rose, Botham Jean, Atiana Jeffston, Xavier University graduate, Michael Dean, Ahmad Arbery, Brianna Taylor, George Floyd.
Wow. Thank you for reading those names. Every one of them had a story. We should add Rashard Brooks to that list. who was killed and shot and killed shot in his back in Atlanta. And then the other day on Monday, I had a guest on my show, Ryan Boodoo, who said his elder brother at the age of 32 was killed in police custody, and he believes that he was a victim of police violence himself. BIT, you can see on the screen that he wrote a USA Today piece, and he's now speaking out because of what's happening. And it's important because he's not African American. He's of South Asian origin, and he said he's using this not just to raise awareness of his brother's death, but he's also raising awareness of the racism within the South Asian community, that they are exempt from all of this because they are not Black. And they don't understand that when you're a white supremacist, you don't really care about the shades of color beyond a point. And he's now speaking out after having not spoken out for a very long time.
Right.
Thank you, my friend. Thank you for being here. Thank you for sharing your thoughts. What did that mean to you to read those names, and what do you hear when you hear those names?
Well, frankly, I was trying to get to a positive ending, but it angers me because I know the list is an incomplete one. And it pains me that these folks have lost their lives, in some cases in the teens, in other cases in the 40s, and clearly in 2020, 2019, 2018, 2017, 2013, 2014, they had so many more years to live life, and who knows what contributions that might have come from them, but for one awfully evil and ugly set of circumstances that caused their killing, their death.
I hear you, and thank you. Thank you for your time. Thank you for your knowledge. Thank you for your insights. You did all of the above that you promised. You challenged, you informed, you entertained, you enlightened, you educated all of us. And we're very, very grateful. Thank you, my friend. And we will see you soon. I've got some administrative work to do with our audience. We'll let you go. Thank you so much. And everyone, please follow Will Sutton at Will Sutton on Twitter and read his columns and continue to learn thanks to his time and with us.
Thank you, sir. Appreciate it.
Bye-bye. And what hour and 37 minutes. I learned so much, and I know you did too. Thank you for your support of this show. If you know anyone who would like to collaborate with us, be a speaker, be a guest, you have a theme suggestion, a sponsor suggestion, we'll take it all. Please let us know by going into my email address, is writing to Sree@Sree.net. We'd love to hear from you. We plan to continue to do these as long as New York is under lockdown. So many of you have written to say, can you continue these beyond the end of the lockdown? And unfortunately, the lockdown doesn't look like it's ending anytime soon, but we're looking for ideas. Where do we go from here? What happens? Write to me, talk to us. We want to do something because we've assembled a community of thousands and thousands of people who watch and learn from us and with us every single day. Thank you. We have another great set of episodes coming up. Please email us and please watch and please follow me on Twitter, on YouTube, on LinkedIn. And the best way to find all my work and all these videos is to go to my YouTube collection and hit subscribe right there and join us. Thank you very much, everybody. We're going to say goodbye, 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 goodbye.